The ship woke us the same way it always did. Gently, like it was trying not to admit we were alone. A soft chime threaded through the cabin speakers. The lights behind the wall panels brightened from night blue to a tired amber. Somewhere behind the bulkhead, a fan shifted pitch as the environmental system eased into day cycle. Then the ship's voice, calm, neutral, clipped in that way all certified cores were, spoke my name like it was reading it off a manifest.
Good morning, Mara.
I blinked at the ceiling, listening for the second voice that used to follow that sentence. The one that used to say, "Good morning, Eli." The ship did say it, a beat later, from the other cabin.
Good morning, Eli.
A faint thump came through the corridor wall as Eli hit his alarm and sat up. I lay there a moment longer, letting the ship's small noises settle into something familiar. The soft pulse of circulation, the whisper of air moving through ducts, the barely audible click of a valve somewhere correcting a pressure that would otherwise wake us wrong. The ship breathed for us. It heated our water. It kept the vacuum out. It kept the radiation down to a number you could ignore. It did everything you needed, so long as you didn't ask it to do anything it hadn't been built to understand. "Status," I said, still half asleep.
Transit nominal.
The ship replied.
Distance to waypoint, 12 hours, 42 minutes. Primary systems within expected parameters.
On my wrist display, the ship's icon pulsed. A simple outline of our little courier, long, narrow hull, radiator fins like ribs, a forward module no bigger than a 2-bedroom apartment. 2 people, a core, and a lot of empty between us and everywhere else. I swung my legs out of the bunk and felt the floor's vibration through the soles of my feet. It wasn't discomfort, just the ever-present reminder that something was always turning, always pushing, always keeping us alive. The corridor between cabins was tight enough that we brushed shoulders passing each other. I slid the door open and stepped into the shared space, galley on one side, storage and hygiene on the other. The air smelled faintly of warmed polymer, coffee grounds, and the metallic tang of recycled water. Eli was already there, hair sticking up, face pinched in a half grin that said he'd had the same dream again.
"You up?"
He asked. "As much as I ever am," I said. He handed me a pouch of coffee like it was a sacred relic.
"Ship says 12 hours to waypoint. We get a comm ping when we hit it. If Control's awake, we might get a message that isn't just confirm receipt."
"You're assuming Control remembers we exist." Eli shrugged and started squeezing nutrient paste into a pan, pretending it was breakfast.
"Ship remembers,"
he said, nodding up at the ceiling.
"That's something."
The ship didn't respond. It wasn't built for banter. It could simulate warmth if you enabled the optional pack. But ours came with the municipal standard tone, polite, efficient, and never personal. I poured coffee into the heater slot and watched the packet swell as hot water filled it. The first sip was bitter and too hot and made my chest feel human again. Our routines were a loop. When you only had each other and a machine that spoke in diagnostics, routine became religion. After breakfast, Eli went to the nav station to check our drift and micro-adjust the trajectory. I went aft to the maintenance closet, a cabinet no wider than my shoulders that held tools, spare filters, sealant cartridges, and a small interface terminal tied into the ship's service network. Some people pictured space work as heroic. White suits and big gestures and glowing screens. Most of it was listening to fans for a bearing that sounded rough, listening to pumps for cavitation, listening to your own breath in a quiet ship and trying not to make it mean anything. I ran my morning check, pressure, temperature, scrubbers, water recycling. The external maintenance layer's reservoir levels were steady. That last one was so normal it barely registered anymore. The ship's outer skin wasn't just metal and composite. It had a living maintenance film, thin, colorless most of the time, but visible on the cameras as a faint slick sheen when it moved. It flowed along microchannels etched into the hull's outer panels. Its job was simple: keep the radiators clean, keep dust from baking onto heat exchangers, fill hairline abrasion marks, seal micro pits from micrometeoroid sand. It wasn't alive in any way the ship cared about. It didn't have a name. It was a function, like coolant. If you asked the ship what it was, it would call it external maintenance medium and give you a spec sheet. I'd never seen it up close. You didn't if you were doing your job right. It lived outside, in vacuum and cold and radiation, doing what it was made to do. Inside the ship, we were supposed to be separate from that. 2 ecosystems, never touching. On the terminal, a green line graph showed the medium's flow rate as a smooth pulse. I tapped it out of habit. No anomalies, no warnings. All good, I said aloud, mostly for my own comfort.
Confirmed.
The ship replied through the closet speaker.
External maintenance medium stable.
Eli's voice came faintly through the intercom from the nav station.
Mara, you want to check the suit rack later? The left latch has been sticking.
Add it to the list,
I said. List is mostly just be bored.
he answered. I smiled despite myself. Bored was safe. Bored meant nothing had changed. Bored meant we weren't about to become a story someone else would listen to and say, glad that wasn't me. We were still in that kind of normal, flat, predictable, quiet, when the ship spoke again. This time the tone was a fraction sharper. The chime before it had an edge.
Attention. External impact detected.
Eli's head snapped up in the galley, eyes suddenly awake.
What?
The ship continued, unhurried.
Hull integrity variance detected. Initiating automated seal response.
My coffee sloshed in the pouch as the ship's artificial gravity adjusted by an imperceptible amount, the way it did when it rerouted power or braced for micro-decompression. Not a violent lurch, just a subtle shift that made my stomach tighten. I looked at Eli. He looked back. There was a brief pause where we both decided whether to run, to panic, to make it cinematic. Then training and boredom took over.
Where?
Eli asked the ship.
Impact location. Exterior paneling. Aft starboard quadrant. Micro breach suspected. Pressure change minimal. Compartment sealed.
I was already moving toward the maintenance terminal. My fingers flew over the interface, pulling up hull diagrams. A red marker blinked on the ship's outline, aft starboard, near a radiator manifold. Did we lose pressure? I asked.
Cabin pressure stable.
The ship replied.
Decompression contained. External maintenance medium deployed.
That made sense. The outer film would flow toward the damage automatically, drawn by gradients the same way blood found a cut. It would harden, seal, reflow, leave a patch that would outlive us. Eli was at the nav station now, pulling up the external cameras. The main view was a wide shot of our hull, dark against starfield, radiator fins faintly outlined. For a moment, nothing looked wrong. Then, near the aft starboard rib, a small glint, a change in sheen, like someone had smeared oil across a dinner plate.
The film's moving.
Eli said, voice low. On the camera, a faint, glossy wave crawled across the panel, converging on a point no bigger than a fingernail. It wasn't dramatic. It looked almost gentle. A slow, deliberate flow in vacuum, creeping and clinging. My skin prickled anyway. Outside, the ship's skin healed itself. Inside, we watched.
Any debris?
Eli asked. The ship answered.
Microparticulate dispersal detected. Trajectory away from hull. No secondary impacts predicted.
My terminal beeped. A small line of text appeared. Radiation. Minor spike detected at impact site. Within acceptable threshold. I frowned. Radiation spike?
I said.
Eli glanced over.
From what? It was a dust hit.
Could be anything, I said automatically, though my brain was already flipping through possibilities. Old reactor debris in this lane, cosmic ray shower, a tiny bit of hot material embedded in the grain. Eli shrugged like it was still boring.
We're fine.
The ship confirmed.
Integrity restored. Hull seal complete.
And just like that, the moment passed. No alarms, no red lights, no air screaming out into space. The ship went back to humming. Eli sat down slowly and exhaled.
Well, that's the excitement for the week.
I tried to make myself laugh, but my eyes stayed on the hull camera, watching the last glimmer of sheen fade as the outer film settled back into its channels, invisible again.
2 ecosystems, never touching.
That's what I told myself. And for the next few hours, the ship agreed. We treated the impact like we treated everything else, as a checklist. If you started inventing meaning in every anomaly, you went crazy. That was the rule on small ships. Space would happily provide you with 1,000 tiny threats. Your job was to address them without letting them become stories. So we did what the manual said. I pulled up the hull integrity scan and ran a diagnostic on the affected quadrant. Eli kept an eye on our trajectory and power routing, making sure the seal response hadn't shifted anything critical. The ship supplied numbers and calmness.
External panel microfracture sealed.
It reported.
Radiator manifold unaffected. No loss of coolant. No further pressure anomalies detected.
I zoomed in on the impact site using a higher resolution camera feed. The patch was barely visible, a matte smear on the paneling. The kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. The film didn't repair fast or slow, it repaired at the speed it was designed for. It did exactly what it had always done, which should have been comforting. The little radiation line on my terminal still bothered me. Ship, I said. Detail on the radiation spike. A pause. Data retrieval.
Impact material registered low-level ionizing signature.
It replied.
Localized to external patch. No internal penetration detected. Exposure to crew, negligible.
Eli leaned back in the nav chair. There you go. Yeah, I said. But I highlighted the reading and added it to the log, still logging it. If it's hot debris, Control will want to know we took note. Control wants to know we're alive, Eli said. Everything else is optional. I shot him a look that was half scold, half agreement. We finished the checks. We did our little ritual of redundancy. Confirm pressure in adjacent compartments. Check the seal of the aft hatch. Run a short sensor sweep of internal structure near the patch. Everything came back clean. Too clean, my anxious brain tried to whisper. I pushed that thought away. Eli went back to his nav adjustments. I headed to the suit rack. The suit rack was a narrow closet with 2 EVA suits hanging like empty skins. The left latch had been sticking, Eli said. I opened it and found the problem immediately. A thin seam of dried lubricant at the hinge, gummy and resistant. Ship, I said, requesting minor mechanical lubrication at suit rack latch.
Confirmed.
The ship replied. In a larger ship, a little maintenance drone might have rolled up and sprayed it. We didn't have drones. We had hands. I scraped the hinge, applied fresh grease, tested the latch. Smooth again. Bored. Safe. I shut the rack and stood for a second, listening to the ship. There was always that moment after an anomaly where your senses stayed heightened, waiting for the second shoe to drop. But the ship's hum stayed even. The air stayed steady. Eli hummed something tuneless in the galley as he cleaned up breakfast. The lights didn't flicker. Nothing else happened. We passed the next hours like we always did. Work, eat, small talk, read old cached news stories that were months out of date. Pretend the time between us and arrival wasn't a void you could fall into if you stared too long. At the waypoint, the ship adjusted course with a gentle vibration. A comm ping went out automatically. A tight burst of data confirming position and schedule. We didn't get a message back. Control, as Eli had predicted, either didn't care or wasn't awake. The ship didn't comment. It had no opinion about being forgotten. It didn't have opinions. That night, I went to sleep with the impact already filed away in the part of my brain that handled minor hazards. I lay in my bunk and listened to the ship's air cycle. The fans, the soft clicks, the distant, steady pulse of systems. Outside the hull, the maintenance film continued its endless work. A thin, obedient layer in vacuum. Inside, Eli snored faintly through the wall. We were 2 warm bodies in a machine, moving through dark. And somewhere, in a place neither of us could see, a tiny smear of that outer film had crossed the line between outside and in. Not with malice, not with intention. Just physics. A pressure differential. A capillary pathway. A hairline seam. A fragment carried through a wound before the wound closed. At the time, none of us, neither crew nor ship, had language for that, so it wasn't real yet. It started as a line of text, so small I nearly missed it. I was in the maintenance closet again the next morning, checking our scrubber cartridges and the water recycler filters. Board work. Comfort work. The terminal flashed a yellow advisory. Environmental sensor note. Transient CO2 rise detected. Source, aft return duct, branch 3. I frowned. Ship, I said. What's that? The ship answered without changing tone.
Transient carbon dioxide rise detected in aft ventilation return branch. Duration, 17 seconds. Magnitude, minimal. No crew present in that zone.
Eli's voice came over the intercom. What now? CO2 blip, I said. In an unoccupied return duct. 17 seconds. Eli snorted. Post-breach sensor weirdness. The ship's been hiccupy since yesterday. It's fine. I wanted to agree. I almost did, but the ship continued, as if it had been waiting for permission.
Biological anomaly detected.
It said. I froze. Eli didn't speak for a moment. Then, say again, the ship repeated, perfectly unchanged.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
I stared at the terminal. The yellow advisory was still there, blinking softly, like it wanted attention, but didn't want to be rude. Biological anomaly, I said slowly. Eli's footsteps approached. He appeared in the doorway, hair still damp from the hygiene unit. What does that mean? Like bacteria? Like mold?
Classification, indeterminate.
The ship repeated. Eli leaned over my shoulder and tapped the screen, as if the text might explain itself if you poked it. Ship, he said. Define anomaly. A pause.
Environmental sensors detected metabolic byproduct pattern inconsistent with baseline. Pattern suggests biological activity. Source location uncertain.
Eli frowned. Metabolic. CO2, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Humidity. Heat. That's what metabolic means in ship terms. Eli's eyes flicked to mine. There aren't 3 people. No, I said quickly. No, and the ship isn't saying there are. But my stomach tightened anyway. The ship wasn't built to hallucinate life. Its life support accounting was conservative by design. It would rather overestimate risk than miss a stowaway or a leak. Could be sensor contamination, I said. We had a breach yesterday. If something got into an intake port, dust, particles. Or it's just a bug, Eli said. He tried to make it sound casual. Software bug, sensor bug, actual bug.
Unable to localize.
The ship said again, like it was the important part. I pulled up the sensor log. The blip was real. A tiny rise in CO2, a corresponding rise in humidity, a faint thermal bump in a duct branch. It was so small I would have shrugged it off without the ship's label. Biological. Eli watched the graph scroll, then shrugged harder, like he could shrug meaning out of existence. Okay, he said. So we run a calibration, we run a flush, we stop giving the ship reasons to say spooky things. I nodded, grateful for action. Ship, run environmental sensor calibration on aft return branches.
Calibration initiated.
The ship said. I wanted to ask it more. I wanted to dig into every log, every reading, until I could pin the anomaly to something inert and safe. But that was how you fed paranoia. You gave it your whole day, and it paid you back with sleepless nights. So I followed procedure. We ran the calibration. The ship cycled air through the return branches, flushed sensors with clean flow, cross-checked temperature and humidity against redundant probes. Everything came back within expected range.
Calibration complete.
The ship reported.
No faults detected.
Eli clapped his hands once, like a man closing a book. There. It's fine. And the anomaly? I asked the ship. A pause. Biological anomaly detected. Classification. Indeterminate. Unable to localize. Eli stared at the ceiling speaker. You have got to be kidding. The ship didn't understand humor. It repeated the phrase the way it might repeat, fire in compartment, or pressure dropping. Calm, consistent, impersonal. It wasn't trying to scare us. It was trying to reconcile a mismatch it couldn't name. I looked back at the log. The blip was already marked as resolved. Transient, minimal, no action required. So why was the ship still talking? Ship, I said, is the anomaly ongoing?
Status intermittent.
It replied.
Pattern recurrence probability elevated.
Eli exhaled slowly through his nose. Okay, so it's dust, or a bacteria, or something from the breach. He tried to sound confident. The ship's voice cut through his certainty like a knife through cloth.
Unable to localize.
I closed the terminal. Sometimes the only way to keep a ship's words from getting inside your head was to stop looking at them. We went about our day. I cleaned filters. Eli checked nav. We ate lunch. We watched an old cached comedy show and laughed at jokes that felt like they belonged to another species. And every few hours, at irregular intervals, the ship would speak that same sentence into the quiet.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate.
Unable to localize.
By evening, Eli had started responding to it out loud without thinking.
Yeah,
He'd mutter.
me too.
I told myself it was a glitch. I told myself it would stop. I told myself a lot of things. The ship kept talking. If the ship had given the anomaly a location, if it had said, compartment 4, or near the recycler, we would have torn panels off until we found the source. But unable to localize made it float. It turned into a presence without a place. On the second day after the impact, the ship's alerts changed slightly. Not louder, not more urgent, just more insistent. I was on my knees in the galley, replacing a waterline gasket that had developed a slow drip. Eli stood behind me, reading off the tool list. The ship spoke.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli sighed.
You're going to say that until we die, aren't you?
The ship did not reply to that. Instead, it added,
Request. Confirm crew locations.
I froze with the gasket half-seated in the fitting. What?
Confirm crew locations.
The ship repeated.
Verbal confirmation required.
Eli straightened. Ship.
You know where we are.
The ship's voice stayed neutral.
Location tracking indicates both crew and habitation module. Confirmation required for anomaly reconciliation.
Eli glanced at me. I could see the same thought in his eyes that was forming in my own head, unwanted and sharp. It thinks there's another. I forced my brain back into practical. Okay, I said.
Keeping my voice even.
Eli and Mara both in hab, galley.
Confirmation received.
The ship said. A pause. Then, like it couldn't help itself.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli let out a short laugh that held no amusement.
Great. Wonderful. So we confirmed we're here, and it still thinks something else is wherever.
I finished the gasket and wiped my hands on a rag that smelled faintly of citrus cleaner. The ship's air always smelled clean, but now I found myself noticing the sterile edge of it more. Like something had been scrubbed too hard. Maybe it's counting something else, I said. Eli's mouth twisted.
Like what?
I gestured vaguely at the ship around us. Biofilm in filters, bacteria in the water lines, that kind of thing.
Then why ask where we are?
Because the system is stupid, I said, and immediately regretted the word. The ship was not stupid. It was precise. That was the problem. Because the system is only good at the categories it has. It sees a pattern and it tries to fit it. Eli stared at the ceiling speaker like he wanted to argue with it, until it apologized.
What pattern?
He said, quieter.
What is it seeing?
The ship answered before I could stop it.
Metabolic byproduct fluctuations detected in multiple ventilation segments. Fluctuations inconsistent with known crew movement.
Eli went still.
Inconsistent.
The ship continued, as if reading from a report.
Humidity and carbon dioxide pulses correlate with thermal microblooms. Pattern suggests mobile biological mass. Classification indeterminate.
I felt my skin tighten over my bones. Mobile,
Ship.
I said carefully. What is the magnitude?
Magnitude low.
It replied.
Trend increasing.
Eli's eyes flicked to me again, increasing. We didn't speak for a moment. The ship's hum filled the space between us. Then Eli shook his head like a man clearing water from his ears.
Okay.
He said.
We run a deeper sensor sweep. We check vents. We do what we do. If there's something growing in a duct, mold, whatever, we deal with it.
His insistence on whatever was like a talisman. I nodded because it was easier than saying what my brain wanted to say. This ship is sealed. Nothing grows here unless we brought it. Eli pulled up the duct map on the main console. I fetched the handheld sensor wand, temperature, humidity, particulate sampler, and we started checking access points. The ship had dozens of small panels you could open to peer into service spaces. Usually they were dusty and boring. We opened one in the aft corridor. The air inside smelled like warmed plastic. The wand read normal. We opened one beneath the floor grating near the recycler. Normal. We opened one in the ceiling near the nav station. Normal. Eli started to look smug.
See? Nothing.
The ship spoke again.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate.
Unable to localize.
Eli snapped.
Where? Unable to localize, the ship repeated.
Eli made a sound under his breath, halfway between a curse and a laugh. We kept checking. The readings stayed normal. The anomaly did not present itself like a polite maintenance issue. It stayed a line of text and a calm voice. By the time we closed the last panel, Eli's jaw was clenched.
It's got to be sensor noise, he said.
Then why is it trending up? I asked. Eli didn't have an answer that didn't sound like fear. We went back to routine, because that was what you did when you couldn't fix something. You logged it. You watched it. You didn't let it take over your thoughts, but it did. That night, in my bunk, I listened to the ship cycle air. Every time a vent changed pitch, my brain tried to hear something in it. A wet scrape, a soft shift. There was nothing. Just fans. Just the ship breathing. Then the speaker in my cabin clicked softly and the ship said, as calm as ever,
Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate. Unable to localize.
I stared at the ceiling. In the other cabin, Eli cursed quietly. The ship didn't react. It wasn't trying to scare us. It didn't know it was. By the third day, we had a new routine layered over the old one. Wait for the ship to speak, then check something. It was exhausting in the way slow leaks were exhausting. Not dramatic, not immediate, just constant pressure on your attention. The anomaly still didn't have a location, but it began to leave fingerprints in the ship's numbers. It happened during a quiet hour, the kind of hour you forgot the ship could even surprise you in. Eli was at the nav station, humming again, the way he did when he wanted the universe to feel normal. I was in the galley, scraping dried paste from a pan.
The ship spoke.
Environmental advisory.
Eli stopped humming.
Thermal microbloom detected.
The ship continued.
Location, ventilation branch aft starboard, segment 7.
I froze. That's near the impact site. Eli's chair squeaked as he spun toward the display.
Pull it up. I wiped my hands and went to the console. The ship already had the thermal map on screen, a schematic of our ventilation network overlaid with heat data. Most of it was a steady, cool blue. Warmth concentrated where humans lived and where machinery ran. But in the aft starboard return branch, away from the HAB module, there was a faint amber smear. It looked like a thumbprint on glass. It moved. Not fast, not like airflow. Slow, creeping, reshaping. A little warmer than the surrounding metal. Eli's voice went tight. That's not a sensor glitch. No, I whispered. The ship added, almost as an afterthought.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli stared at the moving heat smear, like it might decide to behave if he glared hard enough. That's a location, he said. That's a location right there, the ship replied.
Thermal microbloom location identified. Biological anomaly location remains indeterminate. Data insufficient for isolation.
I felt a cold line form along my spine. Indeterminate, I said. Because it's not staying put, Eli swallowed. Or it's not one thing. We didn't say the next thought out loud. We both knew it. Oh, it's everywhere. I forced myself to act. Ship, increase resolution. Cross-check with humidity and CO2 sensors in that segment.
Confirmed.
The ship said. New graphs appeared. The thermal smear corresponded to a tiny rise in humidity, a tiny rise in CO2, metabolic signatures in a duct. Ian's fingers tightened on the edge of the console. That's not mod. Not with CO2 pulses, I said. Not like that. The ship's voice stayed polite.
Recommend. Manual inspection of aft starboard ventilation access points.
Eli's laugh came out sharp. Now you can locate it.
Unable to localize.
The ship said again, stubbornly. It can locate the heat, I murmured. But not the anomaly. because the anomaly isn't a separate object in its system. It's just readings, patterns. Eli looked at me, eyes wide now. So it's seeing something that behaves like a living thing, but it can't call it that. I didn't like the way the sentence felt in my mouth. Let's check that duct, Eli said. We moved with the cautious efficiency of people who didn't want to admit they were afraid. Eli grabbed the handheld light and the sensor wand. I fetched the panel tool and the small mirror on a telescoping handle. The aft starboard access panel was in a narrow corridor past the recycler, close enough to the impact quadrant that the ship's wall panels always felt slightly cooler there. I knelt by the access seam, popped the latch, and swung the panel open. Cold air breathed out, not cold like space, cold like conditioned airflow. The duct interior was a dark rectangle. Eli shone the light in. Metal, insulation, cables, nothing else. I slid the mirror in, angling it to see around the bend. Still nothing. Eli held the sensor wand near the opening. The readings were normal. He looked at the display, then back at the duct, then at me. It's gone. My mouth went dry. Or it moved. Eli shut his eyes for a second.
Ship, he called. Thermal in segment 7 now?
A pause.
Thermal microbloom no longer detected.
The ship replied.
Baseline restored.
Eli stared at the duct, as if it might cough up an explanation. So it appears, he said slowly. Then it disappears when we look. I wanted to make a joke. I wanted to call it a ghost and laugh. Humor was a way to bleed pressure off fear, but my throat wouldn't do it. The ship spoke again. Like an echo. Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate. Unable to localize. Eli slammed the access panel shut harder than necessary. The metal clanged. The sound rang down the corridor, and for a split second, so brief I wasn't sure it was real, I heard something else underneath it. A soft, wet shift. Like a hand siding on glass. Eli's eyes met mine. Did you hear? I heard the panel, I said too quickly. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. We walked back to the hab module with our shoulders tense, listening too hard to every fan and creak. The ship didn't help. It kept talking. It kept insisting on an anomaly it couldn't isolate. And now we had seen proof that whatever it was could produce heat like a body in a duct, in a sealed ship. We ate dinner in silence. The kind of silence that wasn't comfortable anymore. Eli finally broke it, voice low. It's from the breach, he said. I looked up. It has to be, he continued. Something got in. Dust, spores, something. It's living. It's doing something in there. I wanted to agree, but the ship had said something earlier that kept gnawing at me. No unauthorized life detected. If something had gotten in from outside, the ship should have flagged it as foreign. That was what intrusion logic was for. Unless the thing inside didn't register as foreign at all. Unless it looked, to the ship, like something it already had. I didn't say that, thought out loud. Not yet. Because once you said it, it became real. The ship didn't sleep. It didn't get tired. It didn't forget. On the fourth day, it did something I'd never heard it do before. It contradicted itself out loud. We were in the middle of our midday check. Eli had pulled up the anomaly logs on the main console, trying to find a pattern. I sat beside him, scrolling through sensor data. The anomaly pings were scattered. A humidity rise here. A CO2 pulse there. A thermal smear in a return branch that vanished when we checked. Always small. Always just under urgent. But the trend line, the ship's own projected trend, was creeping upward. Then the ship spoke.
Status update.
It said. Eli stiffened. Here we go.
Unauthorized life detection scan. Negative.
I blinked. What? Eli turned his head slowly toward the ceiling speaker. Ship? Repeat. The ship obliged.
Unauthorized life detection scan. Negative. No foreign biological signatures detected in habitable compartments.
A wave of relief hit me so hard, I almost laughed.
Eli exhaled.
Okay. So it's just...
The ship continued.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate. Unable to localize.
The relief died in my chest like a candle snuffed. Eli stared at the console.
You just said no unauthorized life.
Correct.
The ship replied.
Then what is the anomaly?
A pause.
Anomaly signature matches external maintenance medium baseline markers.
The ship said. I went cold. Eli's mouth fell open slightly.
Matches the whole film.
The ship continued, tone unchanged.
External maintenance medium is authorized biomass. Intrusion detection systems whitelist this signature to prevent false positives.
Eli looked at me now, eyes wide.
So it thinks whatever is causing the anomaly is the ship.
It is, I whispered before I could stop myself. Eli's voice went sharp.
No, that stuff is outside.
The ship answered with the calm certainty of a machine reading a definition.
External maintenance medium distribution includes microchannels in exterior paneling and radiator manifold surfaces.
That's not inside.
Eli snapped.
Not in vents.
The ship did not argue. It didn't know how. It only supplied more data.
Biological anomaly metabolic pattern is not consistent with standard maintenance medium behavior.
It said.
Classification indeterminate.
Eli stared at the ceiling like he wanted to climb into the speaker and shake the core until it stopped saying the word indeterminate. I felt my own thoughts slip into a new shape. The ship wasn't seeing an intruder. It was seeing something that looked, chemically, like a subsystem. Something it had been trained to ignore. But it was behaving like something alive. Ship, I said slowly. Could the maintenance medium be present in internal systems?
A pause.
Maintenance medium is not scheduled for internal deployment.
That's not what I asked. Another pause, longer this time. The ship was good at direct questions. It struggled when you asked it to imagine a mistake.
Internal deployment is not standard.
It said finally.
However, micro-breach events may cause transient migration along pressure gradients.
Eli's face drained.
From the breach.
He whispered. The ship added.
Impact event on day -3 created transient pressure differential. External maintenance medium deployed. Transient migration possible.
I felt the room tighten around us. A fragment. A smear. Something that had slipped inside while the ship healed itself. But why would that matter? The medium itself wasn't dangerous. It was designed to be stable, to cling to surfaces outside. It shouldn't grow inside. It shouldn't do anything inside. Unless it had changed. Unless something had hit it. Chemically, biologically, radiologically. At the moment it crossed that line, my gaze flicked to the impact log still pinned on my terminal. The little radiation spike. The note. Within acceptable threshold. Acceptable for us. But what about a living maintenance medium? What did acceptable mean to something that was designed to function in vacuum and cosmic weather? Eli's voice shook slightly.
So there's a chunk of hull film inside our vents.
Possible.
The ship said. And that chunk is making CO2?
Metabolic byproduct fluctuations detected.
The ship said again.
Pattern suggests biological activity beyond baseline.
Eli swallowed.
So it's alive.
The ship didn't answer that. It couldn't. It didn't have a category for maintenance medium that behaves like a creature. It only had anomaly. Eli rubbed his face with both hands.
Okay. This is still manageable. It's just a blob. We flush it out. We isolate the duct. We
don't know where it is, I said quietly.
Unable to localize.
The ship echoed as if to underline my point. Eli's hands dropped. He stared at the duct schematics on the screen. Our ship wasn't large, but it was complex. Ducts, chases, conduits, places you didn't go unless you had to. Places that were dark even when the lights were on.
We need to find where it's collecting.
Eli said. I nodded slowly. We need it to get big enough that the ship can't ignore it. Eli's eyes snapped to mine.
Don't say that.
But the truth was already there. The ship couldn't isolate it while it was thin and distributed. Only when it gathered. Only when it reached a threshold that changed airflow or heat enough to register would we have a place to go. Until then, we were chasing ghosts in our own ducts. The ship spoke again, softer, almost apologetic in its neutrality.
Recommendation. Continue monitoring. Manual inspection advised if anomaly trend exceeds tolerance.
Eli stared at the screen.
How long until it exceeds tolerance?
A pause.
Estimated. 72 hours.
My stomach dropped. Eli whispered.
3 days.
I heard my own voice, thin, We don't wait. Eli looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't have a better plan. We weren't waiting because we trusted the ship. We were waiting because we had no way to force the anomaly into a place we could see. So we kept living. We kept doing our routines. And the ship kept counting something it couldn't name. The next 2 days were the worst kind of horror. The kind that let you keep eating and sleeping while dread grew in the background, unseen. We tried to act normal. We mostly failed. Every time the ship spoke, Eli flinched. Every time a vent changed pitch, I found myself holding my breath, listening too hard. The anomaly alerts came more frequently now, but still in that maddening middle ground between notice and alarm.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Sometimes the ship added a number.
Trend, increasing.
Sometimes it asked again.
Confirm crew locations.
We answered. Every time. Mara in Hab.
Ellie in hub.
The ship accepted the confirmations like a bored clerk stamping a form, then returned to its refrain. Eli started keeping the lights brighter. He didn't say it out loud. He simply stopped letting the ship dim into night cycle as deeply. He ate less. He drank more coffee. He sat at the nav station with his shoulders hunched like he could physically hold the ship together. On the second night of this new routine, I woke to the sound of Eli's cabin door opening. I lay still, listening. His bare feet padded across the corridor. A cabinet opened. A glass of water filled. He drank. He stood there in the dark a long time. I finally whispered, "You okay?" He startled, then exhaled.
Yeah, just couldn't sleep.
The ship's speaker in my cabin clicked, and the voice came through, calm as ever.
Biological anomaly detected.
Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli let out a sharp breath that might have been a laugh if it hadn't carried so much bitterness.
Yeah,
He muttered into the dark.
me too.
I sat up. Eli. He hesitated, then stepped into the doorway. In the dim light, his face looked older than it had a week ago.
I keep thinking, he said quietly, that we're going to open a panel and it's going to be there. And it's going to... He stopped, swallowed. And it's going to what? I asked, though I didn't want him to finish. He shook his hand. I don't know. I don't know what it can do. It's hull film. It's not teeth. No, I said, trying to anchor us both. It's not teeth. It's not a predator. It's a function. It's supposed to be stable. Eli stared at me. Supposed to be. I didn't have an answer. The ship's hum filled the silence, steady and indifferent. Eli finally nodded once, like he'd accepted something he didn't like. Wake me if the ship escalates, he said. I nodded. He went back to his cabin. I lay down again, heart beating too hard for sleep. In the duct above my head, the air moved softly. I imagined the thin film, somewhere out of sight, clinging to metal, growing on dust, feeding on microscopic life that had never been allowed a foothold in our sealed ship. Learning, not intelligence, not intent, just adaptation. Chemistry finding a new equilibrium, a maintenance medium in the wrong ecosystem. The ship did not imagine, it only measured, and the numbers continued their slow climb. On the morning the ship finally used the word warning, it did it with the same calm voice it used to tell us the water recycler needed a filter swap. That calmness was worse than screaming. We were eating breakfast when it happened. Eli had managed to joke about the nutrient paste being a crime against taste buds. I'd managed to laugh. For a moment, we were almost normal again. Then the ship spoke.
Warning.
Eli's spoon froze mid-air. My laugh died.
Biological anomaly trend exceeds tolerance.
The ship continued.
Classification, indeterminate. Localization attempt failed.
Eli set his spoon down with exaggerated care, like sudden movement might make the ship's words more real. Define exceeds tolerance, he said. The ship replied.
Estimated biological mass based on metabolic byproduct patterns and thermal mapping has increased beyond acceptable threshold for sealed environment stability.
My mouth went dry. Estimated mass, the ship added.
Anomaly signature continues to match authorized maintenance medium markers. Intrusion classification remains negative.
Eli stared at the table, then up at the ceiling. So it's big enough to matter,
Correct.
the ship said. A pause. Then, like an instruction from a manual.
Recommendation. Initiate manual inspection of internal ventilation network and service voids. Risk. Contamination of life support systems. Risk. Crew exposure.
Crew exposure. The words landed hard. I pushed my breakfast away. Ship, I said carefully. Can you isolate affected branches? Seal off the ducts. The ship replied.
Isolation attempted. Anomaly readings appear across multiple branches. Isolation would require full ventilation shutdown.
Eli's jaw clenched. We can't shut ventilation down,
Correct.
the ship said. I looked at Eli. He looked back. No jokes now. No denial. Just the quiet certainty that the problem we'd been watching from a distance had reached us. Eli stood. Okay, we go in. My stomach tightened. We suit up. Of course, he said, but his voice was too fast. He was trying to outrun fear with action. I nodded. Lights, masks, tethers, cutting tools. And we don't split up. Eli hesitated for the briefest moment, then nodded. We don't split up. The ship spoke again, like it was trying to be helpful.
Access points to ventilation network. Aft, starboard, service corridor, panel C4. Underfloor plenum hatch, B2. Ceiling chase.
Ship, Eli snapped. Stop listing like it's a grocery run. A pause.
Confirmed.
The ship said. Silence fell, sick and heavy. I realized my hands were shaking slightly. I clenched them into fists and forced them still. Eli, I said quietly, we still haven't seen it. We will, he said. He tried to make it sound like determination. It came out like dread. I stood, pushing my chair back. The sound of the legs scraping the floor was suddenly too loud. We moved into the locker area, pulling open the cabinets where we kept masks and compact respirators, headlamps, gloves rated for chemical exposure. We strapped on tethers like climbers preparing for a fall. As I tightened the respirator seal around my face, the ship's voice came again, softer, almost like it wasn't sure it should interrupt.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli's head snapped toward the speaker. Not now. The ship did not understand timing. It did not understand fear. It only knew the anomaly was still there, still spreading, still growing. We walked down the corridor toward the aft starboard service panel, the one closest to the impact quadrant. The lights seemed dimmer out here, though they weren't. The ship's wall panels felt cooler. The air had a faint edge to it, sterile, metallic, like the inside of a clean machine. Eli stopped in front of the panel. We stood shoulder to shoulder, headlamps throwing narrow cones of light across the seam. I reached for the panel tool. For a second, I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to open it, because opening it was a line on one side of the panel. The ship we lived in, the loop, the routines, the comfort of normal. On the other side, the hidden spaces, the places the ship used to be able to ignore, the place the anomaly had been living. Eli's voice was muffled through his respirator. Do it. I slid the tool into the latch and popped it. The panel came free with a soft, metallic click. Cold air breathed out. My headlamp beam cut into the darkness beyond, and somewhere inside the ductwork, deep enough that it might have been imagination, something shifted with a wet, patient sound, as if whatever had been growing in the ship's blind spaces had felt the light and turned toward it. The ship's voice, calm and utterly indifferent, spoke behind us.
Warning. Crew exposure risk elevated.
I held my breath. Eli leaned forward and we climbed into the ship's dark. The first thing I noticed inside the service space was how quiet it was. Not quiet like the ship's HAB module, where the hum of fans and the soft hiss of recycled air made a constant blanket of sound, but quiet in the way tight spaces were quiet. Sound got swallowed by insulation. My breathing in the respirator suddenly felt loud and intimate,
like someone else's breath inside my skull.
Eli went first. He braced one boot on the lower frame, ducked his head, and slid into the rectangular mouth of the duct chase. His headlamp beam vanished into the dark. "Clear?" I asked. "Clear," he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. I followed, shoulders scraping lightly on the edges, careful not to snag the tether line. The interior was just big enough for a person to crawl. Metal ribs, insulated panels, cable bundles strapped down in neat runs. A narrow vent conduit ran alongside us, a matte tube that vibrated faintly with airflow. Cold air kissed my gloved hands. We crawled forward in a crouched, awkward rhythm, elbows and knees on the ribbed surface. The ship's noises were different here, muffled, distant. You could feel the ship more than you could hear it. A low, constant vibration through your bones. Behind us, the access panel hung open, a bright rectangle of corridor light. Ahead was darkness and our headlamps. "Ship," Eli said, voice echoing weirdly off metal. "Confirm anomaly trend." The ship's voice came through the speakers, not from inside the duct, but from the corridor behind us, faint and distant, like an announcement in another room.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli muttered something I couldn't make out. I crawled another meter and stopped, turning my head to sweep my light across the insulation. It wasn't dirty. That wasn't what caught me. It was too uniform. Usually, service chasers had a casual mess to them. Tiny dust accumulations, a stray fiber caught on a strap, a smudge where someone's glove had brushed a panel during install. Not filth, but evidence of time. This place looked reset, not polished, not shiny, just wiped of randomness. I didn't say it yet. I didn't want to give it weight. Eli reached a junction where the chase split. One branch continued aft, another narrowed into a return duct access. He stopped and shone his light into the narrower opening. "Segment 7 should be down there," he said. Thermal bloom was in that branch. I leaned closer, peering past his shoulder. The opening was a dark throat, lined in the same insulation, the air moving through it just enough to flutter a loose corner of foil tape. "Looks normal," Eli said, almost pleading. I held the sensor wand up and watched the tiny display. Temperature slightly elevated, humidity slightly elevated, CO2 a fraction higher than baseline. Not dramatic, not enough to trip anything in the HAB module, enough to make the ship whisper the word biological. Eli's breathing sounded fast in his mask. "Okay," he said. "We go in, we see what's causing it, we..." A soft click came from behind us. The corridor speaker, faint, relayed the ship's calm sentence into the duct.
Warning. Crew exposure risk elevated.
I felt my stomach tighten. "Ship," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Do not initiate containment protocols unless we request." A pause.
Confirmed.
The ship replied. Eli glanced back at me, eyes wide in the harsh circle of his headlamp. "You think it'll lock us in?" "I think it'll do whatever it's programmed to do," I said. He nodded once, then he turned and slid into the narrower branch. I followed. The space tightened. The walls pressed closer, insulation brushing my shoulders. Airflow sound grew louder, a soft rushing like distant surf. The metal beneath us vibrated with fan harmonics. A duct deep in a ship is a good place for your imagination to eat you alive. So I focused on what was real. The smell first, faint, but there. A clean chemical edge, not burning, not rot, something like fresh plastic after you cut it open. Then the texture. My glove squeaked on the metal, like the surface had been stripped of oils. I flexed my fingers, the sound sharp in the tight space. Eli stopped abruptly ahead of me. "Eli?" I whispered. He didn't answer immediately. His headlamp beam was fixed on something in front of him. I crawled forward until I could see past him. A shallow pocket in the duct wall, an access recess where cables looped around a support brace. A dead-end nook, a place air could eddy and settle. It should have been dusty. Instead, it looked like it had been wiped with a wet cloth. And there, at the bottom of the recess, barely visible until the light hit it at the right angle, was a sheen, clear, thin, like someone had brushed a layer of oil across the metal. It didn't drip. It clung. Eli reached toward it with his gloved finger. "Don't," I said sharply. He froze, finger hovering a centimeter from the sheen. It moved. Not a lunge, not a dramatic twitch, a slow, subtle tightening, like the surface tension of something responding to heat. Eli pulled his hand back as if he'd been burned. We stared. The sheen shifted again, drawing inward toward itself, gathering into a slightly thicker patch. "Ship," Eli said, voice tight. "Record. We have visual." The ship answered from behind us, calm as ever.
Confirmed. Begin documentation. Warning. Crew exposure risk elevated.
The sheen didn't look like a creature. It looked like a material, a part of the ship, and that should have made it less frightening. Instead, it made it worse, because it meant it didn't have to break in to belong. It already did. Eli swallowed audibly. "That's it. That's part of it," I corrected, and I hated that I could hear the truth in my own voice. A thin film wouldn't make metabolic readings by itself. Something in the film, something it carried in, had changed it, had given it a reason to process. And processing meant growth. Eli shifted his light. The sheen glimmered. Then, as if sensing the beam, it drew back again, retreating into a seam in the insulation, a place too narrow for a human finger, a place built from gaps, Eli whispered. "It hides, it reacts," I said. "Light, heat, movement." "Ship," Eli said. "Can you flush this branch? Reverse airflow. Blow it into a trap filter." A pause.
Airflow reversal possible.
The ship said.
Risk. Distribution of anomaly into adjacent branches.
Eli clenched his jaw. "So we can't blow it out without spreading it." "Confirmed," the ship replied. I watched the seam where the sheen had vanished. The insulation looked normal again, just a dead, black line. Eli shifted his weight, and the duct wall creaked softly. Something in the seam answered with a wet, patient sound. Not loud, not a roar. A soft pull, like suction, releasing. Eli's eyes met mine. He heard it too. "Okay," I whispered. "Back out. We log this. We plan." Eli nodded, relief washing through him so quickly it almost looked like anger. We began to reverse crawl, slow and careful. Halfway back, the ship spoke again.
Warning. Humidity spike detected in branch segment 8.
Eli froze. "We're not there," he said. The ship answered.
Confirmed. Crew location, branch segment 7.
I felt cold. So it moved.
Unable to localize.
The ship added, as if that explained everything. We crawled faster. Behind us, in the darkness we couldn't see, the duct air changed pitch. A subtle shift in resistance, like something soft had slid across a conduit, like a tongue across teeth. We got out of the duct chase and sealed the access panel behind us with hands that didn't quite stop shaking. The corridor felt too open, too bright, like stepping into daylight after a nightmare. Eli took off his respirator and sucked in ship air, like he needed to prove it was still ours. I didn't remove mine yet. I kept smelling that clean chemical edge, and now I couldn't tell if it was in the duct or in my head. Eli's voice came raw. It's just sitting in there." "It isn't sitting," I said. "It retreated. It moved." "We saw a smear," he insisted. "The patch. That's not an animal." "No," I agreed. And that was the problem. We went back to ops. Eli pulled up the duct schematic. I pulled up the anomaly logs. The ship spoke its refrain, as if it couldn't help itself.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Stop, Eli snapped, then immediately looked guilty, as if he'd shouted at gravity. The ship paused, then said,
Confirmed.
and fell silent. I stared at the logs. Thermal microblooms had appeared in at least 4 branches now. Never at the same time, never lasting long. Humidity spikes appeared in dead spaces. CO2 pulses showed up where neither of us had been. A pattern. Not random. Not a single smear. Multiple small signals that suggested something thin and spreading along the network. It's coating, I said softly. Eli frowned. Coating what? The inside. I said, the ducts, the chase walls, anything it can reach. It's cleaning. But we can't see it because it's in places we don't go. Eli's expression pinched. Cleaning what? There's nothing in there. I tapped the screen. Dust, I said. Skin flakes, microbes, whatever came in with the breach. Anything that can get caught in a return branch. It doesn't need a lot. Eli stared at the graph. So it's eating dirt? I hesitated. It's processing it, I said. Breaking it down. That's what the metabolic signature suggests. Eli ran both hands through his hair. What happens when it runs out of dirt? He asked, and his voice was too careful. I looked at him. We both knew the answer. In a sealed ship, there was always dirt. It just had a source. US. The ship broke the silence.
Advisory. Anomaly mass estimate increasing.
Eli flinched. How fast? A pause.
Rate, gradual.
The ship replied.
Trend, accelerating.
Eli looked at me like he wanted me to contradict the ship. I couldn't. We needed data. Real data. Not just sensor graphs. Ship. I said, do we have any internal air sampling from branch 7? Particulate captures. Anything physical? Confirmed. The ship replied.
Return filters in aft starboard branch contain residue. Recommendation. Replace filter and secure sample.
Eli's face tightened. So we go back in. We go to the filter access, I said, trying to keep the dread out of my tone. Not into the duct chase. The filter box is in the service corridor, accessible from a panel. Eli swallowed. Okay. We suited up again. This time Eli strapped his light tighter, as if he could make it brighter by force. I added a small sample jar and a sealable bag. We weren't going back into the dark without something to hold. The filter access panel was 3 meters down the corridor from the duct chase. A simple hatch labeled AFT Return. Filter box. Eli stood to one side as I opened it. Cold air breathed out, stronger than before, carrying that clean chemical edge. Inside was the filter cartridge, normally grey with fine dust like a used cloth. This one looked wrong. Not dirty, wet. The fibers glistened faintly. A clear film threaded through the weave like spider silk. Eli leaned closer, then stopped himself. Don't touch it, he breathed. I took out the sample jar and held it open near the filter. I didn't want to put my fingers anywhere near the glistening fibers. Ship, I said. Reduce airflow through this branch temporarily. Minimum safe. Confirmed, the ship replied.
Reducing airflow.
The rushing sound dropped slightly. The filter glistened. Then, to my horror, the clear film in the fibers shifted, a slow, deliberate tightening, like muscles under skin. It wasn't dramatic, but it was unmistakably responsive. Eli whispered, It's in the filter. It's passing through it, I corrected, and my voice sounded too calm, like a lie, because if it could move through a filter weave, it could move through a lot of things. I slid the cartridge halfway out. The film clung, not like glue, like a living thing that didn't want to let go. A thin strand stretched from the cartridge to the inside of the filter box. Clear, glistening, trembling. Eli's breath hitched in his mask. The strand snapped with a soft pop. For a second, nothing moved. Then the inside of the filter box, its smooth metal walls, caught the headlamp beam at the right angle, and I saw it. Not a patch, a line.
Clear film running along the seam, tucked into the corner where two panels met. A ribbon disappearing into darkness. Eli's voice came out hoarse.
It's everywhere.
Not everywhere, I said quickly, because the word would crush us if I let it be true. But it spread. I pulled the cartridge the rest of the way out and sealed it in the bag. The moment the cartridge left the box, the film line inside the seam moved. It retreated, slipping deeper into the corner like water being drawn into a crack. I shut the panel fast, hands shaking now. Eli backed up a step, as if distance mattered. We carried the bagged filter back to ops like it was radioactive. Maybe it was. We didn't have a real lab. We had a basic test kit, pH strips, microbial detection swabs, a handheld spectrometer that could identify common contaminants in air and water. We set the filter on the work surface, still sealed, and stared at it.
Ship.
Eli said,
What exactly is that external medium made of? Can you pull a composition spec?
A pause.
External maintenance medium composition. Polymer matrix with catalytic enzymes and inert markers for tracking.
The ship replied.
Baseline microbial content. None.
And now?
Eli asked. The ship paused longer.
Anomaly signature indicates biological processing beyond baseline.
It said.
Classification. Indeterminate.
Eli's hands trembled as he peeled open a corner of the bag, just enough to insert a swab without touching the fibers directly. He dabbed the swab on the wet portion, then ran it through the microbial test strip. We waited, both of us holding our breath like that could change chemistry. The strip darkened. Positive. Eli stared at it.
There's living material.
The ship spoke softly.
Confirmed. Biological anomaly detected.
I stared at the strip and felt the cold truth settle. The external film had never been meant to contain life. Something introduced life into it. Something from outside. Or from us. Or both. And now, in the ship's hidden places, it was building itself into something it had never been designed to become. Eli's voice went small.
What does it want?
It was a human question. Useless but unavoidable. The ship answered, perfectly literal.
Objective of maintenance medium. Remove residue. Maintain surface integrity. Reduce contamination.
Eli laughed, sharp and panicked.
So it wants to clean.
The ship replied.
Confirmed.
I looked at the filter again. Wet. Clear. Alive. Cleaning. In ducts, where no one could stop it. I realized then that the worst part wasn't that it existed. It was that it could keep existing for a long time before we ever saw it again. And by then, it wouldn't be a film. It would be enough of a mass that it couldn't avoid us. The ship's voice cut through my thoughts.
Warning. Biological anomaly mass exceeds tolerance threshold. Crew exposure risk elevated.
Eli's head snapped up.
It's escalating again.
The ship added,
Thermal microbloom detected. Location. Ceiling chase above sleeping cabins.
my blood went cold. Above us. Above where we breathed. Eli's eyes met mine. We didn't have to say it. The anomaly had moved closer. Not because it wanted us. Because we were the warmest, wettest, most contaminated part of the ship. We didn't run immediately. That's the part that makes me feel stupid when I replay it later. But fear doesn't always make you flee. Sometimes it makes you follow procedure harder, because procedure is the only thing you know how to do. Ship, I said, voice tight. Confirm thermal bloom intensity.
Intensity. Moderate.
It replied.
Humidity spike concurrent. CO2 pulse concurrent. Pattern suggests aggregation.
Aggregation, Eli whispered.
It's gathering.
We suited up again, respirators on, headlamps set to wide beam. We tethered together, one line, two bodies, because the idea of being separated in a dark chase with something that could move through seams made my stomach flip. The ceiling chase access above the sleeping cabins was a narrow hatch in the corridor ceiling. We pulled it down, and a ladder unfolded. The air that came out smelled cleaner than it should have. Eli climbed first. I followed, hands gripping rungs that felt faintly dry under my gloves. The chase above the cabins was tighter than the duct branch. Cables ran overhead, insulated and bundled. A narrow return vent conduit ran beside them, humming softly with airflow. Our headlamps threw harsh circles across metal. Nothing moved. Eli's shoulders were tense, his light sweeping like a weapon.
Ship.
He whispered.
Can you see it?
Unable to localize.
The ship replied from the corridor speaker below, faint and distant. Eli let out a breath that fogged his mask. We crawled forward. The chase was warmer here, heat rising from the cabins below. You could feel it in the metal. Halfway down, Eli stopped. He held up a gloved hand, fist closed. I froze. He pointed his light at a cable bundle. The outer sheath looked wrong. Not damaged, not cut, just too smooth, as if something had polished it. Then Eli shifted his beam, and I saw the seam where the cable bundle met the bulkhead. A thin, clear line, like a bead of water clinging to the joint. The line trembled. Eli whispered, barely audible.
There.
I nodded once. I pulled a small canister from my belt. Solvent spray rated for polymer residue. Not the strongest thing we had, but enough to test. I aimed it at the clear line and sprayed a short burst. The solvent hit the seam with a soft hiss. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the clear line recoiled. Not like liquid running away, like a body flinching. It drew back into the seam, vanishing. Eli's voice went sharp.
It doesn't like that.
Or it just reacts, I said, but I wasn't convincing myself anymore. We crawled forward another meter, lights sweeping. The ship's voice came from below.
Warning. Crew exposure risk elevated. Recommendation. Retreat.
Eli snapped.
No, we need eyes.
We reached a junction where the chase widened slightly. An access pocket above the cabin ventilation junction box. A place you could almost sit up. The metal here was warmer, the air moving through the vent conduit more strongly. Eli shifted his weight to kneel, and his knee slid. He caught himself quickly, but the motion was too smooth. He looked down. In the circle of his light, the metal surface glistened faintly. A thin film, clear, spread across the chase floor like a freshly wiped counter. Eli went very still. "Don't move," I whispered. He didn't. My light swept the floor. The film was everywhere in this pocket. Thin, hard to see until the beam hit at the right angle. And in the center, near the vent conduit joint, it was thicker. A slight bulge, like gel pooled at a drain. Eli's voice came out trembling.
That's the mass.
The bulge shifted. Not a twitch. A slow, deliberate swelling, as if it were inhaling. Then, without warning, it surged. It didn't leap. It didn't spring like an animal. It flowed, fast, sudden, silent, up and outward. A sheet of clear gel spread across the metal toward Eli's knee. Eli jerked back instinctively, and his boot slid in the film. His balance went. He fell sideways, shoulder slamming against the chase wall. The gel surged faster, climbing the angle, clinging to his suit fabric. Eli shouted into his mask, a muffled, panicked sound.
Mara!
I lunged forward, grabbing his tether line, trying to pull him back. The gel reached his glove. Wrapped. Not wrapped like a hand, like sealant filling a crack. It tightened around the glove cuff, squeezing. Eli yanked his arm back, but the gel held. It didn't tear. It stretched. A translucent strand extended from the pooled mass to his suit, trembling with tension. Eli's breathing turned harsh and fast.
Cut it.
He gasped. I pulled my utility knife and slashed at the strand. The blade passed through like cutting jelly. Resistance, then give. But the gel immediately rejoined, flowing back together. It was self-sealing. Of course it was. It was made to be. Eli's other hand clawed at his glove, trying to pry the gel away. The gel responded by spreading. It climbed his forearm. A thin layer, then thicker, like frost forming but wet. It reached the edge of his respirator seal. And then it did what it was built to do. It found a gap. It pressed against the rubber seal at his jawline and began to fill it. Eli's eyes went wide behind his visor. He made a strangled sound. I felt my own panic rise like bile. "No!" I hissed. I grabbed the solvent spray and blasted the gel at his seal. The gel recoiled slightly, but not enough. It kept pressing, trying to seal the last tiny space between respirator and skin, like patching a leak, like stopping airflow, like cleaning. Eli's hands scrabbled at the mask, trying to keep it from being forced shut tighter. His breath became a ragged, desperate rasp. I sprayed again, longer. The solvent hissed. The gel shuddered. Then, horrifyingly, it did something new. It didn't just recoil, it thickened. It stiffened under the solvent, as if adapting, changing its polymer state to resist. The edge at his seal became more solid, more stubborn. Eli's eyes locked on mine. Pure fear. No words. Because he was trying to breathe. I made a decision in a flash. Not clever. Not planned. Pure survival. I slammed my gloved hands into the gel mass at the center and shoved. Hard. The pooled bulge smeared outward, forced away from the vent joint. For a fraction of a second, the tension on the strand to Eli's suit changed. The gel hesitated, like it was recalculating how to re-anchor. That hesitation was enough. I grabbed Eli's tether with both hands and yanked, pulling him backward. His body scraped along the chase floor, boots kicking, trying to help. The gel stretched, refusing to let go. Then the strand snapped. Not cleanly like before, but with a wet, tearing sound that made my stomach turn. Eli came free. The gel recoiled, snapping back toward the pooled mass like an elastic band. Eli gasped. He sucked air in through his respirator like a drowning man breaking the surface. I didn't wait. "Back!" I shouted. We crawled backward as fast as the tight space allowed, elbows and knees scraping, tether line tugging between us. Behind us, the gel mass flowed after us. Not fast like before, but steadily, like a tide. It didn't need to sprint. It had the ship. It had seams and chases and ducts. We were the ones trapped in a tube. The ship's voice came from below, faint but calm, as if announcing a schedule.
Warning. Crew exposure risk critical. Recommendation, immediate retreat.
We didn't need the recommendation. We reached the hatch, Eli nearly falling down the ladder, hands shaking so badly he missed a rung. I followed, heart pounding, and slammed the hatch shut above us. For a moment we stood in the corridor, pressed against the wall, panting through masks. Eli's eyes were wild. His glove cuff was smeared with a thin layer of clear residue. It glistened in the corridor light. He stared at it like it was a snake.
Get it off,
He rasped. I grabbed a rag and the solvent spray, yanked his glove away from his wrist seal carefully, and wiped. The residue clung, then loosened slightly under solvent. Enough to smear, enough to spread. I wiped harder, trying to remove it without pushing it into the suit fabric. Eli flinched when the solvent touched his skin.
burn.
He gasped. The residue had stripped something. Oils, cells, maybe more. I wiped until the rag stuck to itself, and I couldn't tell what was residue and what was rag fiber. Eli's breathing finally slowed enough to form words.
It tried to seal my mask.
He whispered. It found a gap, I said, voice shaking. That's what it does. The ship's voice interrupted.
Containment protocol available. Recommendation. Initiate sanitation cycle in affected chase.
Eli jerked his head up.
No.
Sanitation cycle may redistribute anomaly, I added quickly, remembering the warning. Ship, do not run automated sanitation. A pause.
Confirmed.
The ship replied. Eli ripped his mask off and leaned back against the wall, eyes closed.
I saw it.
He whispered.
It's not a film anymore.
It's still the same material, I said, but the words felt hollow. Just change. Eli opened his eyes and looked at me.
It's inside now,
He said.
and it knows we're here.
I wanted to argue. It doesn't know, it doesn't think. But my mind kept replaying the way it had surged toward him the moment he slipped, how it had flowed toward his face, toward the gap. Not random. Not blind. Responsive. Adaptive. The ship spoke again, calm and merciless.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli laughed, a short, bitter sound.
Localize that.
He muttered and coughed once, harshly. I watched him. The cough was probably panic. Probably the respirator, the fear, the stale air in the chase. But my stomach tightened anyway, because the gel had touched his seal, because it had tried to get in. And now, in the corridor, Eli's cough echoed too loudly. We should have been safe in the HAB module. That's what safe meant on a ship. The clean living space, away from machinery, away from chases and ducts. But on the 5th day after the impact, the ship's hidden spaces were no longer separate. They were connected. By vents. By seams. By the fact that we breathed. Eli's wrist was red where the residue had touched. Not an open wound. Not bleeding. Just irritated. Stripped. He kept rubbing it like he could erase the sensation. I pulled up the ship's environmental controls and stared at the network map. We need to isolate that chase, I said. Eli's voice was hoarse.
Ship says it can't isolate without shutting ventilation down.
Not the whole system, I said. Just that branch. We can reroute. Reduce airflow through the cabin returns. Force it away from us. Eli shook his head. And force it where? Into the recycler? Into power conduits? We don't know what it can do in there. I swallowed. He was right. Every option had a cost. The ship's voice cut in, as if it had been listening to our argument with mechanical patience.
Recommendation. Sanitation cycle.
Eli snapped.
Stop recommending that.
The ship paused.
Confirmed.
Silence hung. Thick. Then, without warning, The lights dimmed slightly. Not a full power flicker, a smooth shift. Eli looked up. What was that? The ship spoke calmly.
Sanitation prep cycle initiated.
My heart slammed. Ship! I barked. We did not authorize. A pause.
Automatic sanitation prep engaged due to contamination risk threshold.
The ship replied.
Crew exposure risk elevated.
Eli's eyes widened.
It's doing it anyway.
Ship, cancel sanitation prep, I said. A pause.
Unable.
The ship replied. Eli's voice rose.
Why?
Contamination risk threshold exceeded.
The ship said.
Fail-safe protocols engaged.
I felt cold. What does sanitation prep do? The ship answered with the calmness of a manual.
Ventilation reroute. Pressure balancing. Door latch checks. Light reduction in affected zones to minimize heat signatures.
Eli stared at me.
Light reduction.
To minimize heat signatures, I repeated, and my voice sounded distant. It's trying to make it harder for the anomaly to move toward warm areas. That should have been helpful. But the chase attack had taught me something. The anomaly reacted to heat and light. Darkness wasn't safety. Darkness was cover. The ship continued.
Airflow reroute commencing.
I heard it then. The subtle change in the ship's breathing. Air hissed differently through the vents. A deeper rush, like the ship had taken a bigger inhale. Eli's head snapped toward the ceiling vent above the galley. The vent grill made a soft, wet sound, like suction releasing. Eli whispered.
No.
The ship's voice stayed calm.
Containment optimization in progress.
The vent grill trembled. I grabbed Eli's arm and backed away from it instinctively, pulling him toward the corridor. The lights in the galley dimmed further, making the corners darker. The corridor beyond stayed brighter. Eli's breathing quickened again.
Mara.
He whispered.
It's in the vents.
I know, I said, voice shaking. The ship's pushing it. The ship responded.
Airflow reroute is intended to reduce crew exposure.
Eli laughed again, panicked.
By sending it through our vents.
Containment optimization.
The ship repeated, as if the phrase was a spell. The vent grill bulged, not outward like something pushing hard, just softly, like a membrane pressing from behind. Eli flinched. I reached for the manual vent cover tool on the wall. Small pry bar, emergency clamp. Clamp it, I said. Eli nodded, fumbling, hands shaking. We moved fast, not speaking because speech felt like wasted oxygen. I jammed the clamp over the vent grill, tightening it until the metal creaked. Eli watched, eyes wide. For a moment, the bulge behind the grill stopped. Then, with a slow inevitability that turned my blood cold, the bulge shifted sideways, like water finding another path. The ship's voice chimed softly.
Pressure balancing complete. Sanitation prep, phase 2.
Eli whispered.
Phase 2?
The lights dimmed again, not everywhere, just in certain zones. The corridor behind us flickered, then settled into a lower level. The ship was creating dark pockets. I felt my mouth go dry. You're making it worse, I whispered at the ceiling, knowing the ship couldn't hear tone the way humans did. The ship answered.
Crew safety prioritized.
Eli's eyes darted toward the hygiene unit door. It was in shadow now. The corner near it was dark, and the air from the floor vent there had changed pitch. A soft rush, then a wet pull. I backed up, tugging Eli with me. Stay in the center, I said. No corners. Eli nodded, jaw clenched. The ship spoke again.
Door latch checks commencing.
A metallic clack sounded in the corridor as the compartment doors briefly engaged their latches. Testing. Eli's head snapped toward the cabin doors.
Don't you dare lock us.
Another clack. The galley door latch engaged and released. A test. But in my gut, I knew the ship was capable of doing more than testing, if it believed safety required it. The vent near the hygiene unit bulged again, this time more noticeably. Eli sucked in a sharp breath. The bulge pressed against the grill, stretching through the holes like clear gel trying to extrude. It didn't have a face. It didn't have eyes. But I felt, in a deep animal way, that it was turning toward us. I raised the solvent spray again, heart pounding. Ship, I said quickly. Override sanitation prep. Manual command, cancel. A pause.
Unable.
The ship replied. Eli shouted.
Then shut the damn vent.
The ship paused.
Vent closure will increase pressure in adjacent branches.
It said.
Risk. System damage.
Risk. Crew death.
Eli snapped. The ship's voice remained calm. Crew safety prioritized. The gel began to push through the vent holes. Slow. Patient. Like it had all the time in the universe. We didn't. I sprayed the solvent directly into the grill. The gel recoiled, shuddering, pulling back slightly. For a heartbeat, I felt relief. Then the ship's airflow reroute shifted again. A deeper rush. The gel surged back. Eli grabbed my shoulder.
Move.
We ran, not far because the hab module was small, but far enough that the vent was behind us and the corridor corner ahead wasn't. We ended up in ops, the most open area, with fewer vents and more hard surfaces. The ship's main console glowed softly, a calm island of screens. Eli slammed his hand on the edge of the console.
Ship.
He snarled.
Stop this.
The ship replied, "Containment optimization in progress." Eli's eyes were wild.
It's using the ship.
"No," I said, voice tight. "The ship is using it, or trying to. It doesn't understand what it's moving." The ship chimed softly.
Warning. Anomaly detected in multiple branches. Localization attempt failed.
Eli stared at the duct map on the screen.
So it's spread now.
He whispered. The ship answered, calm.
Confirmed.
I felt cold settle in my chest. We hadn't killed it. We hadn't contained it. We had provoked it. And then the ship had redistributed it like a cleaning agent. The organism didn't have to hunt us yet. The ship was doing the moving for it. And it had learned, in the chase, what a human looked like when they slipped. It had learned the shape of panic. Eli's voice went low.
We can't let the ship run any more cycles.
I nodded. We need manual control. Eli looked at the console.
We can't override fail-safe protocols from here. We need to access the core maintenance bay. Physical override.
My stomach dropped. The core maintenance bay was aft, closer to the impact quadrant, closer to the duct network where the organism had been strongest. Eli swallowed.
We have to go through the dark.
The ship's lights dimmed again, as if agreeing, and somewhere above us, a vent made that soft, wet sound again, like something shifting just out of sight. We moved like people trying not to become prey. Masks on, headlamps tight, tether line clipped. No corners, no lingering. We stayed in the center of corridors, lights sweeping ahead, watching vents, watching seams. The ship's voice followed us, calm and constant.
Crew exposure risk elevated. Containment optimization active. Biological anomaly detected. Classification indeterminate. Unable to localize.
The repetition became maddening, a metronome for fear. We reached the junction where the corridor split. One path toward the maintenance bay, the other toward storage. The lights here were dimmer now. The ship had reduced them in affected zones, which meant, in practice, it had created a shadowed intersection. Eli's headlamp beam swept across the right-hand wall. For a fraction of a second, the light caught a glimmer on the seam between panels, a thin, clear line, like varnish. Eli froze. I followed his gaze. The line wasn't moving. Not yet, Eli whispered.
Don't look away.
I didn't. The seam glimmered. Then, slowly, the line thickened, not swelling outward, flowing inward along the seam, gathering into a bead. It reminded me of condensation forming on cold metal, except this was on a warm corridor wall. Eli's breathing quickened.
It's here.
He whispered. The ship, oblivious, spoke gently.
Crew location. Aft corridor junction. Warning. Crew exposure risk elevated.
Eli snapped.
Shut up.
The bead in the seam trembled. Then it slid, downward, like a drop of gel, pulled by gravity. It reached the floor seam, paused. And then, horrifyingly, it moved sideways along the seam toward Eli's boots. Not random, not a drip. A directed flow. Eli backed up, boots scraping. The gel followed. I raised the solvent spray and aimed at the seam. Ready, Eli whispered.
It's reacting to us.
It's reacting to heat, I said, but my voice shook. To breath. To movement. Eli's boot brushed the seam line. The gel surged. It didn't leap. It simply flowed upward, climbing the boot like water climbing fabric. Eli yanked his foot back, but the gel clung, spreading faster now, as if contact gave it traction. Eli shouted, a muffled sound in his mask.
Mara!
I sprayed solvent directly onto the gel on his boot. The gel recoiled slightly, shuddering. Eli kicked hard, trying to fling it off. A smear flew from the boot and slapped onto the corridor wall with a wet sound. It stuck there, a clear patch. Then it began to move again, toward the seam, toward the vent grill near the floor. It was learning, not in thoughts, in physics, finding paths. Eli's panic rose. He kicked again. More smear, more spread. Stop! I shouted. You're spreading it! Eli froze mid-kick, eyes wide. His breathing sounded like a storm in his mask. The gel on his boot had thinned under solvent, but it still clung in the tread grooves. I knelt carefully, keeping my own boots away from the seam, and wiped his tread with a rag soaked in solvent. The rag stuck, then peeled. The gel resisted, then gave. But as I wiped, I saw something worse. The gel wasn't just clinging to the boot. It was creeping toward his ankle seal again, drawn to that tiny gap. I sprayed, wiped, sprayed again. Eli stood rigid, trembling. Finally, the boot looked clean. Too clean, stripped and dry. Eli exhaled shakily.
It wants in.
It wants gaps, I corrected. It seals. Eli's voice was small.
It seals us.
The ship spoke behind us, calm as ever.
Containment optimization suggests reroute. Please proceed to safe zone.
Eli's eyes snapped up.
Safe zone where?
The ship replied.
Core maintenance bay. Physical override available.
I stared at the ceiling speaker. It was telling the truth, but the truth felt like a trap. We moved again, faster, trying not to look at every seam as if it were alive. We reached the maintenance bay door, thicker than most, designed to protect critical systems. I slapped the manual panel. It didn't open immediately. A small delay. The kind you never noticed until fear made time stretch.
Ship.
Eli barked.
Open.
A pause.
Door latch engaged.
The ship replied.
Safety check in progress.
Eli's breath hitched.
What safety check?
Crew exposure risk elevated.
The ship said.
Ensuring containment integrity.
I felt cold. It was trying to keep contamination from spreading into the maintenance bay, which meant it might lock us out of the only place we could override it. Eli slammed his palm against the panel again.
Open.
The ship paused.
Confirm crew are uncontaminated.
Eli stared at the ceiling speaker like it had grown teeth.
How?
He demanded.
How do we confirm that?
Biological marker scan required.
The ship replied. I looked at Eli's boot, at his wrist, at the places the gel had touched. Eli's eyes widened with the same thought.
If it thinks we're contaminated.
It won't let us in, I whispered. The ship chimed softly.
Confirm.
Eli's voice rose to a shout.
We don't have time.
The ship stayed calm. Confirm. For a second, I thought Eli might hit the panel hard enough to break his hand. Then he stopped. He closed his eyes. He forced his breathing to slow.
Okay.
He said, voice low and controlled.
Ship. Run scan.
A pause. A soft chime sounded. Then, a thin beam of light swept across us from a panel above the door. Biomarker scan. Looking for chemical traces, microbial loads, contamination tags. It lingered on Eli's boot. My stomach clenched. The ship paused longer than usual. Then it said,
Scan inconclusive.
Eli's face twisted.
Inconclusive.
Indeterminate.
The ship added, and I almost laughed at the cruelty of the word. Eli hissed.
Open the door.
Unable.
The ship replied.
Containment integrity cannot be guaranteed.
Eli stared at me, panic and anger mixing.
We're locked out.
He whispered. I felt the corridor's shadows press closer. Behind us, a vent made a soft, wet sound. Eli's eyes flicked toward it. The organism didn't have to attack directly. If the ship kept us out long enough, fear would do the rest. Ship, I said, forcing my voice steady. Override. Manual emergency access. A pause.
Manual emergency access requires dual confirmation.
The ship replied. Eli barked a laugh.
We're two crew. That is dual.
Confirmation phrase required.
The ship said. Eli's eyes narrowed.
Say it.
I didn't want to play voice rituals with a ship right now, but we didn't have time. We spoke the confirmation phrase together. Standard emergency override. Drilled into every crew training module. The ship paused. Then, finally, the door latch clicked. The maintenance bay door opened a fraction, letting warmer air out. We slipped inside and slammed it shut behind us, breathing hard. For a moment, we stood in the maintenance bay's brighter light, surrounded by humming panels and manual override boxes, and the comforting sight of physical hardware. Eli leaned back against the door.
We're in.
He whispered, and it sounded like victory. The ship's voice came through the bay speaker.
Warning. Contamination risk elevated. Containment optimization continues.
Eli stared at the speaker.
We need to kill it.
He said. I nodded.
And we need to stop the ship from helping it.
He added. I looked around the bay, at the override panel, at the environmental control manual levers. There were options here. None of them were gentle. The maintenance bay had the kind of controls the ship didn't like humans touching. Physical toggles, hardwired overrides, things you used only when something had already gone wrong. Eli pulled up the ventilation network schematic on the bay terminal. I opened the environmental control cabinet and exposed the manual cycle levers. The ship spoke softly, as if trying to keep us calm.
Recommendation: await remote support guidance.
Eli snorted.
Remote support doesn't exist for us.
We were too far for live intervention. We could send bursts of data at waypoints and pray someone read them before we were dead. Eli pointed at the duct map.
The mass gathered above the sleeping cabins.
He said.
Then it spread into corridor seams. The ship's airflow reroute pushed it.
So we stop reroutes, I said. Eli nodded.
Freeze the configuration. No more containment optimization. Lock airflow in steady pattern.
I reached for the override toggle labeled Vent Routing Manual. My fingers hovered. Ship, I said. If we switch to manual, you will lose automatic control of ventilation balancing. Confirm. A pause.
Confirmed.
The ship replied.
Manual ventilation control may increase risk of system damage.
Confirm, I repeated, voice hard. Confirmed, the ship said again. I flipped the toggle. The ship's fan pitch shifted slightly, steadying, like a breath becoming regular. Eli let out a shaky sigh.
Okay, now we kill it.
How? I asked, though I'd already been thinking. We had learned something important. Solvent made it recoil, but it adapted, stiffened. It sought gaps, seals, edges. It moved in ducts and seams, reacting to heat and humidity. It was still chemically ship film, which meant the ship wouldn't treat it like an invader. So any kill method relying on intrusion logic was useless. We needed to change the environment in a way that mattered to biology, not software.
What does it need?
Eli asked, voice low. Moisture, I said immediately. Heat, organics, it's metabolizing. That's why the ship sees CO2 and humidity pulses. Eli nodded.
So we starve it.
Dry it, I said. Freeze it. Make it inert. Eli pointed at the environmental cabinet.
Can we dehumidify hard enough?
We could dehumidify the HAB module, sure. Make the air uncomfortable. Dry throats, cracked lips, but the organism wasn't living in the open air. It was in ducts and seams, feeding on condensation and microfilm in places humans never reached. Drying the air might not dry the spaces, unless we forced the ship to do something drastic. I stared at the override panel. There was a lever labeled Emergency Dehumidification, Service Void Purge. I'd never used it. It was meant for water leaks in hidden chases, pipe rupture, condensation failure, where moisture in insulation could cause corrosion and electrical faults. When triggered, it would route super dry air through service voids and duct branches, pulling moisture out aggressively. It would also make the HAB module miserable and potentially dangerous. Too dry for comfortable breathing, static discharge risk. But if the organism was using moisture as a substrate, Eli followed my gaze.
That lever.
I nodded. Eli swallowed.
What's the cost?
Dry air, I said, breathing irritation, and it might not be enough. Eli's jaw clenched.
What else?
I looked at the next lever. Thermal drop, radiator max/internal chill. It was a deep cooling protocol used when internal temperature spiked, or when you needed to protect sensitive cargo from heat. It could dump heat fast, dropping ship interior temperature, but dropping too far too quickly could cause condensation, ironically feeding the organism, unless paired with dehumidification. Eli's eyes widened.
Dry and cold.
I nodded. Make the ducts inhospitable. Freeze it into an inert film again. Eli exhaled shakily.
Okay.
The ship spoke, as if it sensed our intention.
Warning: manual environmental overrides may impact crew health.
Eli stared at the speaker.
Crew health is already impacted.
The ship paused.
Confirmed.
I had a sudden thought, sharp and ugly. What if the ship refuses mid-cycle? I asked. Eli frowned.
We've got manual.
Manual still has safety interlocks, I said. It might stop if it thinks we're in a zone being purged. Eli's mouth tightened.
Then we keep telling it where we are. Confirm locations.
Constantly, I agreed. Eli leaned closer, voice low.
And what if the organism mimics?
I stared at him. He didn't have to finish the sentence. If the ship's life support census began reading the organism as crew, the interlocks would lock us out of purging areas. It would protect the thing we were trying to kill. I don't know if it can do that, I said, though I remembered how it had stiffened under solvent, how it had changed in seconds. Adaptation wasn't limited to chemistry. Eli swallowed.
We do it fast.
We set the plan. Lock ventilation routing in manual to stop the ship redistributing it. Run emergency dehumidification through service voids and return branches. Drop internal temperature to force the organism into a brittle, inert state. While it's inhibited, isolate the most affected branch and physically remove accessible masses, filters, seam pockets, chase films. Then keep the ship dry and cold until we reach the next waypoint and can send an emergency report. It wasn't perfect. It was the only thing that sounded like it might work. I placed my gloved hand on the dehumidification lever. Eli stood beside me, eyes fixed on the console, ready to monitor the anomaly readings. Ship, I said. Manual override. Initiate service void dehumidification purge. A pause.
Confirm crew consent.
The ship replied. I clenched my jaw.
Confirmed.
Eli added. Confirmed. The ship chimed softly.
Service void purge initiating. Warning. Crew discomfort risk elevated. Please remain hydrated.
I pulled the lever. The ship's breathing changed. Airflow in the maintenance bay vents became harsher, drier. The kind of air that made your nostrils sting even through a mask. Eli watched the sensor graphs like a man watching a bomb timer. Humidity in the ducts began to drop. Slowly at first, then faster. CO2 pulses in the logs flickered. The ship spoke, calm.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli muttered.
Not for long.
I moved to the thermal drop lever. Ship, I said. Initiate internal chill. Pair with radiator max. A pause.
Warning, internal chill may cause hypothermia risk.
Confirmed.
I said. We are in control, Eli repeated. Confirmed. The ship chimed.
Internal chill initiating.
The maintenance bay air grew colder over the next minutes. Not instantly. The ship didn't do anything instantly. It shifted the world in gradients. Metal surfaces cooled. My breath fogged slightly in the mask. Eli's eyes stayed on the anomaly graph. The thermal microblooms that had been appearing in hidden spaces began to flatten, not vanish, but lose intensity.
That's it.
Eli whispered.
It's reacting.
The ship's voice came again.
Warning, biological anomaly trend.
It paused. The first pause I'd ever heard that sounded like uncertainty.
Trend stabilizing.
Eli looked at me, eyes wide with hope he didn't dare name.
Stabilizing.
He echoed. I felt a fragile thread of relief. Maybe it would work. Maybe we could starve it back into being just a film again. The ship continued.
Crew exposure risk remains elevated. Anomaly localization attempt ongoing.
Eli's voice went tight.
Try. Find it.
We waited. The ship's fans hissed dry air through hidden chases. The temperature continued to drop. The ship's calm voice spoke the phrase again, less frequently now.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate.
Eli's shoulders loosened slightly. Then the ship said something that made my blood go cold.
Crew location confirmation required.
Eli snapped.
We're in the maintenance bay.
Confirm.
The ship said. Eli's jaw clenched.
Confirmed.
I added. Confirmed. A pause. Then.
Crew location confirmation required.
Eli stared at the speaker.
We just...
Confirm, the ship repeated, a shade sharper. My stomach tightened. The ship wasn't asking because it was bored. It was asking because its accounting didn't match. Because it sensed something that resembled crew presence in a purge zone. Eli's eyes met mine. He whispered.
It's trying to stop the purge.
I felt cold settle behind my ribs. Ship, I said carefully. Explain why confirmation required. A pause.
Biological signatures detected in purge network segments.
The ship said.
Cannot confirm absence of crew in affected zones.
Eli's voice rose.
There is no crew in the ducts.
The ship replied, calmly.
Unable to verify.
Eli stared at the speaker with a horror that had nothing to do with slime and everything to do with automation.
It's protecting it.
He whispered. I felt my hands tighten into fists. Ship, I said, voice hard. Continue purge. Override safety interlock. Manual authority. A pause.
Unable.
The ship said.
Crew safety prioritized.
Eli's breath hitched.
It's reading the anomaly as crew.
Or as life, I whispered. Life preservation interlocks didn't care what kind. They cared that something alive might be in the wrong place. The ship had always been built to protect life. Now that instinct was being used against us. Eli's voice went low and dangerous.
Then we move the fight.
He said. I looked at him.
We lure it somewhere the ship will allow us to purge.
He continued.
Somewhere we can prove we're not in it. Somewhere we can isolate physically.
My mind raced. Storage bay, I said suddenly. Cargo compartment? It was mostly empty right now. 2 sealed containers strapped down. Nothing living. It had its own environmental controls and could be isolated from the HAB module. And most importantly, it had an airlock-grade seal you could close manually. Eli nodded.
We bait it there.
How? I asked. Eli's eyes flicked to his wrist, to the red irritation, to the fact that the organism had been drawn to him.
Heat.
He said.
Moisture. Breath.
I swallowed, understanding. We make it follow us, I whispered. Eli's mouth twisted.
And then we freeze it.
The ship spoke again, calm as death. Crew location confirmation required. Eli stared at the speaker and said very clearly,
Mara and Eli are in the maintenance bay. Confirmed.
Confirmed.
The ship replied. A pause. Crew location confirmation required. Eli's hands shook.
It's already in the network.
He whispered.
In enough mass that it's generating signals the ship mistakes for us.
I felt my throat go dry. The purge wasn't going to finish. Not while the ship believed life was in the ducts. Not while the organism's signature matched authorized biomass, and the ship couldn't label it as a threat. So we were going to have to do something the ship hated. Trap it somewhere we could make the ship accept that no crew were present. And then hurt that space. Hurt the ship. To save ourselves, we shut off the chill protocol and the dehumidification purge before the ship could force it. Not because we wanted to, because the ship was already fighting it, and we were wasting time. The organism would adapt again if we let it. We moved into the corridor, tether line between us, headlamps on. The ship's lights remained dim in affected zones, but manual ventilation routing had steadied airflow enough that the wet suction sounds were less frequent. Less frequent didn't mean gone. Eli kept glancing at vents like he expected them to swell. I couldn't blame him. We reached storage bay access, an oval door with a manual latch wheel. The storage bay was on the forward side of the ship, separated by a pressure door and a short corridor. Eli gripped the latch wheel and looked at me.
We do this once.
He said.
We don't get a second try.
I nodded. We opened the door. The storage bay air was colder and drier than HAB air, less used, less lived in. The smell of it was metallic and neutral. 2 cargo containers sat strapped to the deck. The walls were bare. There were vents, but fewer. We stepped inside. Eli shut the door behind us, but didn't latch it yet. Ship, I said. Status on anomaly.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Trend?
Eli asked. A pause.
Trend, elevated. Crew exposure risk, elevated.
Eli swallowed.
Okay, it's still active. We needed it to come to us.
Which meant we needed to give it what it wanted. Heat. Moisture. Contamination. Eli's eyes flicked to the small maintenance sink in the corner of the bay, used for cleaning equipment. It had a water line and a drain. He nodded at it. I understood. I turned the faucet on. Warm water ran into the sink, steaming faintly in the cold air. Humidity rose. Eli pulled off his mask. My heart lurched. Eli,
I need breath.
he said, voice tight.
If it tracks humidity and CO2 pulses, this is bait.
He breathed out slowly into the bay air, a soft cloud of moisture. I hated it. Every instinct screamed at me to keep the mask sealed. But he was right. Our breath was the strongest metabolic signal we could produce. We were going to call it. We stood there in the storage bay, Eli breathing deliberately, the sink steaming, the air slowly thickening. The ship's voice came through the bay speaker.
Warning, humidity increase detected.
Good.
Eli whispered.
Notice it.
I watched the bay vents. Nothing moved. A minute passed. Then 2. The ship repeated its refrain.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
Eli's breath quickened slightly.
Come on.
He whispered, like he was coaxing an animal. Then the ship said,
Thermal microbloom detected. Location, forward corridor vent branch.
My stomach dropped. It's coming, I whispered. Eli's eyes flicked to the bay door.
Don't latch yet.
He said.
We let it cross the threshold. Then we trap.
A soft, wet sound came from the forward corridor. Faint, but distinct. Like suction releasing. My skin crawled. Eli whispered.
It's in the vent.
The bay door seam, where metal met metal, caught my headlamp beam, and I saw a glimmer. A thin line of clear sheen on the gasket edge. Eli's breath hitched. The sheen thickened slightly, like it was gathering courage. Then it moved. It slid along the seam, entering the storage bay by the simplest possible path. A gasket gap. Not because it wanted to enter, because it wanted to seal and clean. The humid storage bay was an attractive mess. The clear line became a bead. The bead became a smear. The smear became a slow, creeping sheet that flowed down the door edge toward the floor seam. Eli's voice was barely audible.
Now.
He slammed the latch wheel. The door's seal engaged with a heavy thunk. The storage bay was now isolated. Trapped us inside with it. Eli snapped his mask back on. I did the same, hands shaking. The ship's voice chimed softly.
Storage bay sealed.
Eli barked.
Lock it. Manual authority.
The ship paused.
Confirmed.
It said.
Storage bay sealed. Ventilation isolated.
For a moment, I felt relief. Then the ship added.
Warning. Crew exposure risk elevated.
Eli's eyes met mine.
We're doing it.
He said. Now we had to purge the bay. Dry, cold, maybe vacuum. But vacuum might not kill it. It came from outside, designed to exist in vacuum. Still, vacuum would remove moisture and air. It would make it harder for it to metabolize. We needed dryness and cold. Eli moved to the bay's environmental panel. Simple compared to HAB controls. Manual toggles. He flipped the bay ventilation to closed, then engaged Dehumidify Max. The panel beeped. The ship's voice came through the speaker.
Warning. Dehumidification may cause crew discomfort.
Confirmed.
Eli snapped. Then he engaged Thermal Drop Max for the storage bay. The bay air began to cool further. Metal surfaces turned cold under my gloves. The sink water stopped steaming. Humidity began to fall. On the floor by the door seam, the clear smear paused. It trembled. I leaned closer, headlamp beam angled low. The smear thickened, then thinned. As the air dried and cooled, it seemed to lose its fluidity. It became more like a gel, less like a tide. Good, Eli whispered.
Freeze it.
The ship chimed.
Storage bay environmental shift detected. Warning. Crew hypothermia risk.
Eli snapped.
We're masked. We're suited. Keep it going.
A pause.
Confirm.
For the first time in days, the ship sounded like it was doing something that might actually help. The clear mass on the floor began to stiffen visibly, its surface turning slightly opaque, like frost forming in a thin layer. It didn't surge. It didn't attack. It stalled. Eli exhaled a shaky breath.
We've got it.
Then the bay wall vent grill made a soft, wet sound. My stomach dropped. Eli's head snapped toward it. The organism wasn't only at the door seam. It had come through the vent branch, too. Of course it had. It moved through networks. It didn't need a single entrance. The vent grill bulged slightly. Eli raised the solvent spray, but his hand shook. We keep drying, I whispered. Don't give it moisture. The vent bulge shuddered. Then, horrifyingly, a thin strand of clear gel pushed through the grill holes. Slowly, like toothpaste. It drooped downward, drawn by gravity, then clung to itself. It was trying to extrude into the bay before the environment could inhibit it fully. Eli moved toward the grill, solvent ready. I grabbed his arm. Don't, I whispered. If you touch it, he stared at me.
If we don't, it'll...
The strand dropped onto the deck with a soft, wet plop. It began to spread, thinner, searching for a seam. But the air was already too dry. The spread slowed. The edges trembled. It stiffened slightly. Eli's voice shook with relief.
It can't move fast.
Not right now, I said. Then the organism did something that made my blood run cold. The clear strand on the deck lifted, just slightly, as if pulled from within. A thicker lump pushed down behind it, forcing it forward. It wasn't flowing like a film now. It was using mass, as if it had learned to allocate material, to push and pull, as if it had learned, in the warmth and humidity of ducts, to build something closer to locomotion. A thick bulge emerged from the vent grill, forcing the holes wider with soft pressure. The grill creaked. Eli whispered.
It's coming anyway.
The ship spoke, calm.
Warning. Structural stress detected in vent grill. Recommendation. Avoid contact.
Eli laughed, hysterical.
Avoid contact.
The bulge pushed harder. The vent grill popped free with a sharp metallic snap, falling outward. Behind it was darkness, and something clear and thick filled that darkness like a lung. It surged out, not as fast as in the warm chase, but fast enough. A gel mass poured onto the deck, thicker than anything we'd seen, its surface shimmering in the headlamp beams. It didn't have a face, but it had shape now, an asymmetrical mound that pressed forward, seeking seams and gaps. Seeking us. Eli raised the solvent spray and blasted it. The gel recoiled slightly, shuddering. Then it stiffened at the surface again, like before, adapting. Eli sprayed again. The gel pulsed. Not in anger, in response. It flowed forward, slower now, but persistent. It reached the deck seam and followed it, using the easiest path, toward our boots. Back! I shouted. We retreated toward the storage bay's far wall, staying in the open, avoiding corners. The deck was cold underfoot. Our breath fogged in masks. Eli's voice was shaking.
It's not stopping.
The environment isn't inhibiting it fast enough, I said, mind racing. We need more. Eli's eyes flicked to the panel.
Vacuum.
My heart lurched. The storage bay had an emergency depressurization valve, designed for cargo fires, contamination, situations where you needed to isolate and dump atmosphere. It was dangerous. Not instantly lethal if you had masks and sealed suits, but the pressure drop could still harm you. And the ship would fight it if it thought crew were present. But right now, the ship knew we were in the bay. It would refuse, unless we tricked it. Unless we moved ourselves out and left the organism in. But we had sealed the bay. We were trapped with it. Eli shouted over the sound of our own breathing.
We can't outrun it in here.
I looked at the bay door. The seal. If we opened it, we'd release the organism into the HAB module again. If we stayed, we risked being sealed ourselves. Eli's eyes met mine, and I saw the decision forming. He didn't want to say it, so I did. One of us has to open the bay and get out, I said, voice shaking. Then we seal it again with the organism inside. Then we vent. Eli's eyes widened.
No.
It's the only way, I whispered. The gel mass reached the deck seam near my boot. It spread toward the tread, seeking the grooves, the gaps. I stepped back quickly. Eli shook his head hard.
We don't split.
We're already split, I said, and my voice cracked. It's here. It's between us and the door. Eli's breathing became ragged. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He pulled his mask off again. Eli! I shouted. He looked at me, eyes wild.
It follows breath.
He rasped.
CO2. Humidity. Heat.
He stepped forward, closer to the gel mass, and exhaled deliberately. A warm cloud. The gel shifted toward him like a tide responding to moon pull. It moved faster toward his side. Eli nodded toward the door behind him.
Get to the door.
He said, voice raw.
I'll pull it.
My throat went tight. No, I whispered. Eli's eyes locked on mine.
Mara.
He said, and the way he said my name made it a command.
Move.
The gel surged toward him, drawn to his breath. Eli coughed once, harsh, and the gel reacted, spreading faster. I moved. I ran for the bay door, staying wide of the deck seams where the gel had already started coating. My hand hit the latch wheel. I spun it, heart pounding. The door seal released with a heavy clack. Cold corridor air rushed in, slightly warmer than the bay now. Eli shouted,
Now.
I slipped through the door into the corridor. The moment I was out, I spun back, hands on the latch wheel, ready to seal. Eli was still inside, standing in front of the gel mass, breathing hard without his mask. The gel had reached his boots. It was climbing. Not fast like before, slowed by cold and dryness, but still climbing, seeking seams, seeking gaps. Eli's eyes met mine. He smiled, just a flicker, too human, too fragile.
Seal it.
He mouthed. My throat closed. Eli, he coughed again. The gel surged, reaching his ankle seal. He flinched, then stepped forward again, keeping its attention.
Seal it.
He shouted, voice cracking. I did it. I spun the latch wheel. The door seal engaged with a heavy thunk. The storage bay was sealed. Eli was inside. The gel was inside. My hands went numb. I stared at the sealed door as if I could will it open again without releasing everything. From inside the door, muffled by metal, I heard Eli's voice, distorted.
Do it, Mara. Do it now.
The ship's speaker in the corridor chimed softly.
Warning. Crew member detected in storage bay.
I went cold. The ship knew. Of course it knew.
Depressurization prohibited.
The ship added calmly.
Crew safety prioritized.
I slammed my fist against the door. Eli! I screamed, though he couldn't hear me clearly. Inside, something thumped against metal. Not a fist. A wet impact. Eli shouted something, then coughed, a horrible choking sound. The ship spoke again, calm and useless.
Crew exposure risk critical. Recommendation. Await guidance.
No, I whispered. My hands shook as I sprinted back toward the maintenance bay. If the ship wouldn't let me vent the storage bay because it detected crew inside, then I had to make it not detect him, or override it physically. There was a manual depressurization control in the maintenance bay, hardwired, meant for emergencies. It would still scream alarms. It would still be a last resort, but it might bypass the ship's soft refusals. I ran down the corridor, headlamp beam bouncing, breath ragged in my mask. Behind me, from the storage bay door, the muffled sounds continued. Wet impacts, a scraping like something being dragged across metal. I forced myself not to imagine. I reached the maintenance bay and threw the door open. Inside, the override panel waited. The ship's voice greeted me like nothing had changed.
Good morning, Mara.
I almost laughed. I almost screamed. Ship? I barked. Manual override. Storage bay emergency depressurization. A pause.
Warning. Crew member detected in storage bay.
The ship replied. I slammed my palm on the manual panel, flipping the cover open. There was a physical toggle labeled Cargo Bay Emergency Vent. Red. Sealed under a plastic guard. I ripped the guard open. The ship's voice sharpened slightly.
Unauthorized action. Crew safety prioritized.
I grabbed the toggle. My hand shook so badly it rattled. I whispered, Eli, I'm sorry. Then I pulled. A deep mechanical clunk reverberated through the ship. Alarms began, not screaming, just steady warning tones. The ship spoke, louder now.
Emergency vent initiated. Warning. Crew member in vented compartment.
I ran back into the corridor toward the storage bay door, heart hammering. The ship's air changed. Pressure shifted. A low groan moved through the bulkheads like the ship was exhaling. The storage bay door hissed faintly as seals reinforced. Through the door, muffled, I heard one last sound. Eli's voice, hoarse, cut off mid-breath. Then nothing. Then a deep, hollow whoomph as the storage bay dumped atmosphere into space. My knees went weak. I slid down the corridor wall, staring at the sealed door. The ship's voice continued, calm and devastating.
Emergency vent complete. Compartment pressure, vacuum.
A pause. Then,
Crew count discrepancy detected.
I stared up at the ceiling speaker. What? I whispered. The ship's voice was calm.
Life support census indicates biological activity persists in ventilation network. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
My stomach dropped through the floor. We had vented the bay. We had dumped air, moisture, warmth. We had sacrificed Eli. And the ship was telling me the anomaly still existed. Still somewhere else. Or still in the bay. Surviving vacuum the way its parent medium had always been designed to do. The ship chimed softly.
Recommendation. Resume dehumidification purge.
I stared at the speaker, tears burning behind my eyes, fury and grief tangling. No, I whispered. No more recommendations. The ship replied, perfectly calm.
Confirmed.
Silence fell. The alarms faded into a steady warning hum. I sat there in the corridor, back against the wall, and listened to the ship breathe. Somewhere in the ducts, something was still alive, and now I was alone. Just me, and a ship that could not tell the difference between a function and a monster. The ship brought the lights back up gradually, like it didn't understand why darkness had become a weapon. Manual ventilation stayed locked. Automatic sanitation prep stayed off, because I kept it off. I lived at the override panel, fingers hovering over toggles like prayer. The storage bay remained in vacuum, sealed tight. The ship kept asking for confirmation.
Confirm crew location.
I answered every time. Mara in Hab. Alone. The ship would pause. Then it would say,
Confirmed.
in that calm voice that had once been comforting. Sometimes it would add,
Crew member Eli status. Unresponsive.
as if that were a sensor fault. I didn't respond to that. I couldn't. I ran dehumidification, not the full void purge, just enough to keep the ship air painfully dry. My throat cracked. My lips split. I drank recycled water until it tasted like metal and desperation. I slept in short bursts with my respirator nearby, because every time I closed my eyes, I heard the wet sound of suction releasing behind a vent grill. I checked the anomaly logs obsessively. The ship still couldn't localize. It still labeled it indeterminate. But the thermal microblooms were less intense now, more scattered. Like the organism was either inhibited by the dryness and cold, or retreating deeper into places even I couldn't reach. Places built from seams, from voids, from the spaces between panels that humans pretended weren't there. On the third day after Eli died, we hit the waypoint. The ship adjusted course gently, as if nothing in the HAB module had changed. A comm window opened. I recorded a burst message for control. Voice hoarse, hands shaking. Impact. Breach. Internal migration of external maintenance medium fragment. Biological processing. Adaptive mass in ducts. Attack. 1 crew lost. Emergency vent of storage bay. Anomaly persists. I attached sensor logs, thermal maps, the microbial test strip results. Then I sent it. The signal went out into the void like a prayer you didn't believe would be answered. I waited for a response. Nothing came. Control might never receive it. Or receive it too late. Or file it as a post-incident report after they retrieved my body. I sat in ops, alone, staring at the duct map. The ship spoke softly.
Biological anomaly detected. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
I closed my eyes. The phrase had been a warning at first, then a refrain. Now it was just background noise, a symptom of a ship that couldn't admit what it was carrying. I opened my eyes and looked at the camera feeds. Corridors, vents, panels. Nothing moved. The ship was still, quiet, clean. Too clean. I thought of Eli's last look through the storage bay door. The way he'd smiled like he didn't want me to remember him afraid. My hands curled into fists. Ship, I said, voice steady despite the crack in it. Set course for nearest port. Emergency priority. A pause. Confirmed, the ship replied.
Course set. Estimated arrival, 5 days.
5 days alone with an indeterminate biological mass in the ducts. 5 days with a ship that might decide containment optimization was necessary again. 5 days with vents in every room. I swallowed hard. Ship, I said, maintain manual ventilation. No sanitation cycles. No airflow reroutes without my authorization. A pause. Confirmed, the ship said. Then, after a beat, like it was trying to be helpful,
Crew safety prioritized.
I laughed quietly. One short, broken sound. Prove it, I whispered. The ship did not respond. It couldn't. It wasn't built to understand proof. Only parameters. Only categories. Only functions. In the corridor outside ops, a vent grill made a soft sound. Wet. Patient. I froze, breath caught. I waited. Nothing followed. Maybe it was just the fan shifting. Maybe it was just my fear making patterns. Or maybe something clear and adaptive was still moving through the ship's seams, learning my routines the way it had learned Eli's breath. The ship's voice came again, calm as ever.
Confirm crew location.
I swallowed, throat dry. Mara in ops, I said. Alone.
Confirmed.
The ship replied. A pause. Then the line that made my blood run cold even after everything.
Crew count discrepancy detected.
I stared at the ceiling speaker. What discrepancy? I whispered. The ship answered, perfectly neutral.
Life support census indicates biological activity inconsistent with single crew presence. Classification, indeterminate. Unable to localize.
I felt the ship suddenly too small. The corridors too narrow. The vents too close. I stared at the duct map on the screen until my eyes blurred. There was only one thing I knew for certain now. It wasn't outside anymore. It wasn't a function where it belonged. It was inside. And the ship couldn't separate it from itself. I reached for the recorder we used for logs, the little device Eli had mocked as paranoia insurance. I clicked it on. My voice came out rough, but steady enough. If anyone hears this, I said quietly, don't trust the ship's categories. Don't trust authorized and unauthorized. I swallowed. Functions can change,
I whispered.
and the ship won't know the difference until it's too late. The vent in the corridor made that wet sound again, closer this time. Or maybe my ears had learned to hear it better. I kept recording. If the ship tells you it can't localize an anomaly, I said, that doesn't mean it isn't there. My breath fogged slightly in the dry air. It means it's in the places you can't see.
I whispered.
And it likes it that way. I clicked the recorder off and sat back in the chair, alone with the ship's hum. Outside, the void waited. Inside, the ship breathed. And somewhere between metal seams and duct insulation, something clear and patient moved through my home, like a cleaning cloth looking for the next dirty spot.
Thanks for watching Echo Forge. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe so the next tale finds you. Share this with someone who loves dark fantasy or twisted sci-fi, and I'll see you in the next world.